Good morning. And before I get into the meat of this devotion, I want us to begin to grasp the nature of exceptionally large numbers. Does anyone know how long 1,000,000 seconds is? Right off the top of your head. 1,000,000 seconds is about 11 and a half days. It's a relatively short period of time. How about 1,000,000,000 seconds? How long is 1,000,000,000 seconds? If 1,000,000 seconds is 11 and a half days, how long is 1,000,000,000 seconds? It works out to just under 32 years. So there's a big difference between 1,000,000 and 1,000,000,000. How about 1,000,000,000,000? What's 1,000,000,000,000 seconds? 1,000,000,000,000 seconds works out to 31,688 years. 1,000,000,000,000 seconds. Now, after looking at these large numbers, let's look to the really big numbers. When scientists talk about exceptionally large numbers, they begin to speak in powers of 10. This is something I've seen but wasn't familiar with before, intimately familiar with before this devotion anyway. That is, according to Britannica.com, as many number tens as indicated by the exponent form multiplied together. What's that mean? It may seem difficult to grasp, but it's actually really easy, amazingly easy. I had to learn it in order to understand this devotion, so it can't be that hard. 1,000,000 written to the power of 10 is 10 to the 6th power, or 1 followed by 6 zeros. 1,000,000,000, 10 to the 9th power, or 1 followed by 9 zeros. Trillion, 10 to the 12th power. What's 10 to the 12th power? 1 followed by 12 zeros. Easy, easy. Now that we have that out of the way, let's see where this takes us. Scientists have greatly expanded their knowledge and understanding over the last 100 years or so. They have the ability to grasp concepts and truths which were unimaginable before this time, like the fact that every living creature on the planet is built up of protein chains. There are 20 different proteins that we're made of and that these chains are made of. An average protein chain is about 150 proteins long, lined up in a very precise order. And the chance of a single protein chain randomly forming on its own is 1 in 10 to the 164th power, or 1 in 1 followed by 164 zeros. That's a chance of one protein chain randomly forming in the perfect conditions. That's also can be described as 1 in 1,000,000, trillion, 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 trillion. Now, you remember how long 1,000,000,000,000 seconds is, don't you? 1,000,000,000,000 seconds. Taking this forward, you've probably heard or read something like, a room full of monkeys with typewriters will eventually write the entire works of Shakespeare. Well, this is what Wikipedia has to say about that statement. Even if every proton in the observable universe were a monkey with a typewriter typing from the Big Bang until the end of the universe, they would still need far greater amount of time, more than 360,000 orders of magnitude longer, to have even a 1 in 10 to the 500th chance of success. Now, to put it another way, for a 1 in a trillion chance of success of these monkeys, there would need to be 10 to the 360,641st power observable universes. Now, once again, think about that. That's 1 followed by 360,641 zeros. 1 in that many chance of actually doing anything. If there were that many, if there were that many universes, and all of the protons in all of those universes were made up of monkeys with typewriters, it would still take that many in order to have a 1 in a trillion chance of writing the works of Shakespeare. There's a couple of scientists I'm mentioning here that I don't know, but they're mentioned there because this is still that article from Wikipedia. As Kittle and Cromer put it in their textbook on thermodynamics, which is the field whose statistical foundations motivated the first known expositions of typing monkeys, the probability of Hamlet is therefore zero in any operational sense of an event. And the statement that the monkeys must eventually succeed gives misleading conclusion about very, very large numbers. In fact, there is less than a 1 in a trillion chance of success that such a universe made of monkeys could type any particular document a mere 79 characters long. And after reading this, it seems unlikely that there's any possibility of this happening. And now to the meat of the matter. Human DNA. Human DNA is 6.4 billion characters long. Now, we're just talking about the works of Shakespeare. That's not that long compared to 6.4 billion characters. That's considerably longer than the works of Shakespeare, the Bible, many things put together. DNA is described by scientists as the language of life, since by it every aspect of our being is described. If the likelihood that a single protein chain, only 150 proteins long, could accidentally form is infinitesimal, what are the chances of DNA spontaneously occurring? Last week, Brother Jason did a devotion on Psalm 139, but he skipped 2 verses. This devotion is based on those 2 verses, but I want to include just one more verse for context. Psalm 139:14. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. For all the advances of science, they still cannot accurately define human life and consciousness as distinct and separate from the body. All the scientists in the world working together with all the component parts of a human body cannot create life. If those scientists were given a fully formed and otherwise healthy body with no life, they could not restore nor initiate life in that body. All the parts are there, but they cannot comprehend that spark which gives life to these masses of flesh and bone. Psalm 139:15. My substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Now this verse doesn't suggest some subterranean source of life. Rather, it describes the great distance between the Creator and His creation. The gulf of sin that separates us worldlings from God does not hinder Him from granting that initial spark of life. Psalm 139:16. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. Here's where it all comes together. In this verse, God makes sense of what the greatest minds on earth have discovered but can't comprehend. DNA is the book of our individual lives, handwritten by God in the womb. Every aspect of our being is written on our DNA, not only our hair texture and our eye color, but our temperaments and our attitudes. They're written in our DNA. All that remains is what we choose to do with the life we've been given. What path will we take? Which way will we turn with each option that opens up before us? We can choose to acknowledge the goodness and mercy of God and seek the purpose that He would have us to fulfill. or we can go our own way and choose eternal destruction. This choice is all that's not predetermined in God's book for our individual lives. Deuteronomy 30:19, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. When we see the truth that God has plainly set before us, is there really any other option? Are there any prayer requests?